two brothers.
Barely seen or spoken to each other in years.
One day,
They decided to bury the past and meet up once again.
High school の同窓会で会うことにしたの。
reunion.
But they were both in for a
Gran sorpresa.
The eldest
Había cambiado de sexo
女の子になってたの。
y el menor had sustained a terrible sabashkoi.
causing violent
Terrible et imprévisible.
mood swings. But if that weren't enough to be catching up on over a few beers.
The younger fella had discovered avait été adopté.
And his grandmother
Era Rita Hayworth.
And that his grandfather...
Orson Welles.
The international documentary series returns. Storyville, coming soon to BBC 4.
Question Time tonight sees the Home Secretary Jackie Smith, having reluctantly accepted the resignation of the Metropolitan Police Commissioner Sir Ian Blair, sitting alongside Michael Heseltine for the Tories, Charles Kennedy for the Liberal Democrats, Richard Lambert of the CBI and Janet Street Porter, the journalist. Question Time as ever, BBC One, 10:35 after the news.
Now, at 10 o'clock, the BBC News on BBC One with George Alagaya in London and Hugh Edwards in Washington.
Tonight at 10, Britain's top policeman, Sir Ian Blair, resigns. There are accusations that he's the victim of a political feud. In a face-to-face meeting, Sir Ian was told he had no future under London's Tory mayor.
Personally, I see no bar to working effectively with the new mayor, but it is there that we differ, and hence I am unable to continue.
We'll be assessing Sir Ian's record, one marred by the shooting of an innocent Brazilian and dogged by controversy.
Also on tonight's programme, we're live in Washington on the eve of the big vote on the bank rescue plan. A blunt warning to the doubters. They're told to think again about the giant bailout or risk immense damage to the US economy.
This issue has gone way beyond New York and Wall Street. This is an issue that's affecting hard-working people.
In Britain, the money is moving as some savers look for a safer home for their cash. And all set for the big head-to-head. Palin prepares to do battle with Biden in tonight's vice presidential debate.
Here in the Midlands tonight, the teachers' Costa del Sol training trip cancelled after parents complain it's a waste of money. And could the government's green dream be over? Yet more protests over planned wind farms.
Good evening. There are accusations tonight that the most important job in British policing has been turned into a political football. The Metropolitan Police Chief, Sir Ian Blair, resigned today, saying London's new Tory Mayor, Boris Johnson, made it clear he wanted him out of Scotland Yard. Though he's had success in fighting crime in the capital, Sir Ian has been a divisive figure at the Met, and his tenure has been dogged by controversy. But, as our Home editor Mark Easton reports, in the end, it was politics that did for him.
He was the very model of the modern police commissioner, Oxford-educated, politically savvy, ambitious. But in the end, Sir Ian Blair just made too many enemies and too many mistakes. The final nail on his police career was hammered home, he revealed today, by London Mayor Boris Johnson.
At a meeting yesterday, the new mayor made clear, in a very pleasant but determined way, that he wished there to be a change of leadership at the Met. I understand that to serve effectively, the Commissioner must have the confidence of both the Mayor and the Home Secretary. Without the Mayor's backing, I do not consider that I can continue in the job.
The writing was perhaps on the wall when Boris Johnson was elected, a deafening silence when the Mayor was asked whether he backed the Met Commissioner. Today, he said this.
There comes a time in any organisation when it's right to give new leadership, and I have the highest respect for Sir Ian, and I'd like to make it absolutely clear that there was no particular story or no particular allegation that was uppermost in our considerations.
Speaking on the BBC's Question Time programme tonight, the Home Secretary Jackie Smith accused the Conservative London Mayor of playing politics with policing.
What is important when you are both choosing and when you're supporting somebody that you're asking to do a job like that is that actually, frankly, you keep party politics out of it. And frankly, you should put a bit of time and effort into that before you jump to judgment.
Whatever political support Sir Ian enjoyed was not reflected among some of his senior colleagues who regarded him as aloof and arrogant. He was recently accused of racial discrimination by Britain's highest-ranking Muslim officer, Assistant Commissioner Tariq Ghafoor. An investigation is underway into allegations that police contracts were awarded to a close friend of his. And Sir Ian has been personally criticised for mistakes following the tragic killing of Jean-Charles de Menezes, the innocent Brazilian shot dead by anti-terrorist police in 2005.
As I understand the situation, the man was challenged and refused to obey police instructions.
That statement made at the time proved to be completely wrong. The dead man's family were appalled, and Sir Ian, not for the last time, considered resigning. But he apologised and hung on. There were more calls for him to go when, against colleagues' advice, he decided to fight the health and safety prosecution over the shooting. The force was found guilty, his judgment was found wanting. When Sir Ian started as Commissioner in 2005, he toured some of the capital's toughest estates, promising to reconnect with Londoners, reduce fear and bring down crime. And in all those respects, he can point to evidence of success. But in reforming the Met, he also made enemies. Senior officers briefed against him. It emerged he'd recorded a phone call with the Attorney General without permission. And the pressure mounted after two innocent brothers in Forest Gate were arrested by anti-terrorist officers who shot and injured one of them. Some of it was bad luck. A colleague described Sir Ian as a Jonah, jinxed. But in the end, he suffered his own political credit crunch. A new London mayor left the Met Commissioner fatally exposed. He had to go. Mark Easton, BBC News.
Well, our Home Affairs correspondent Daniel Sanford is at New Scotland Yard tonight. Daniel, it's difficult to escape the conclusion that this job has become a political football.
Yes, George, it is certainly starting to look a bit like that. Several times over the last 3 years, I've stood here explaining why Sir Ian Blair wasn't about to resign. Firstly, because nobody wanted to lose a Metropolitan Police Commissioner over the July 2005 bombings. And secondly, because he had the support of the Home Secretary and the London Mayor. Well, yesterday, that all changed when the new Mayor also became the chair of the police authority. Boris Johnson had a meeting with Sir Ian Blair just after 9 o'clock yesterday morning. I'm told it lasted barely 20 minutes. And Boris Johnson said to Sir Ian that he didn't think he was the right man for the job, that he didn't feel he had the support of his officers, and it was time that the Metropolitan Police had a fresh start. I'm told that Sir Ian Blair looked visibly shocked that he didn't go back to the office, and this morning he went to see the Home Secretary and told her that he planned to resign. And what's worrying other senior officers in here tonight is it does look as if the job of the Metropolitan Police Commissioner has become a bit of a political plaything. There are those who think that Sir Ian should have resigned last November when the force was found guilty on health and safety charges over the shooting of Jean-Charles de Menezes and the critical reports that followed. But now he's been forced out by a politician. And for better or for worse, that means that the relationship between the police and politicians has fundamentally changed. George.
Daniel, thank you. They threw out the original plan, but tonight the US House of Representatives is again debating the proposed $700 billion deal to bail out America's troubled financial system. It was approved by the upper house, the Senate, last night. We can cross live now to Hugh Edwards, who's in Washington. Hugh.
George, thank you very much. Well, it is set to be a very tense 24 hours here in Washington as the President's hugely expensive rescue plan returns to the House of Representatives. And a short while ago, I have to tell you, Wall Street recorded more big losses as nervous investors looked ahead to that vote in the lower house, which takes place around tomorrow lunchtime. The Senate, as you were saying, George, approved the deal last night. Now, those who voted no earlier this week have come under intense pressure, not least from the White House, to sanction the deal. Our North America editor, Justin Webb, reports on the eve of the big vote.
The week will end as it began, with the House of Representatives under pressure from both sides. From the street, the message is the same message that representatives listened to on Monday, that this bailout is a theft of taxpayers' money. The market will solve the crisis. But from America's best-known investor, not a Wall Street man, the opposing view that the bill must pass.
This really is an economic Pearl Harbor. That sounds melodramatic, but I've never used that phrase before, and this really is one.
In the light of that, the commander-in-chief has one brief message.
People understand that the House of Representatives needs to pass this piece of legislation.
It's gone from 3 pages to more than 400, so what's in the New Deal? The revised bill would temporarily guarantee that bank savings up to $250,000 would be insured. There's also $100 billion in tax breaks targeted at less wealthy Americans. These include tax relief on property. And some are pushing for accounting rules to be changed to allow banks to value their bad mortgage assets at a price they would fetch later, not now. But the tabloids have spotted as well so-called pork barrel projects to buy individual votes. Puerto Rican rum producers benefit, as do low-budget filmmakers.
This is what they call a legacy vote. It stays with you for your entire political career. Congressmen and women making up their minds in their offices today know that they'll have to defend their judgment for years to come.
We visited a congresswoman who is happy to do that. Wall Street bankers are, she says, not worth defending.
I knew they weren't respected, but when this bill came up, the Capitol here has been flooded. They are held in contempt. It is overwhelming, the reaction of the American people. They view them as their own bastion. They're angry. They say, if we bail out Wall Street, you want to pay my mortgage now?
But while her no stays a no, others on the floor of the House today are not so certain. There are waverers among those who voted no on Monday.
At this point, I am, assuming they don't change it, strongly leaning towards voting for it, because I frankly think we've created a situation where we have to act.
And this evening, another reminder for those still toying with a no vote that it won't be pain-free. Wall Street closing the day with a sharp fall, down 348 points, or over 3%. If the bill goes down a second time, there is a risk that a fall could become a rout. Justin Webb, BBC News, Washington.
Well, the shockwaves from America's financial crisis continue to cause severe problems among the member states of the European Union. Gordon Brown will meet fellow leaders this weekend to discuss a way forward. But talk of a Europe-wide rescue scheme for the banking system has been dismissed by Downing Street. The continued uncertainty has prompted some British savers to move their money in the search for more security. Our business editor, Robert Peston, looks at the latest symptoms of what's going wrong.
What you're looking at may be a credit crunch-proof investment. Kate Moss, sculpted in gold, valued at around £1.5 million. Right now, there's something of a stampede by investors into gold, which is par for the course at a time of great economic uncertainty. In fact, anxious British savers are looking for any shelter from the storm, and following the decision of the Irish government to guarantee that no depositors in Irish banks will lose a penny, some Brits are transferring their precious cash into Irish banks. And do you remember this phenomenon of a year ago? Queues of customers demanding their cash back from Northern Rock? Well, now that Northern Rock is owned by the government and is therefore as safe as, well, not houses, but you know what I mean, they're queuing to put it back in. And the Rock is turning them away.
I feel more secure about Northern Rock now that it's owned by the government than I do about private banks.
There's something of an international epidemic of anxiety among depositors. Tonight, Greece became the latest country to move towards offering unlimited protection to savers. But the flaw in the British banking system isn't an outflow of retail savings, because in the end, most of us can't or don't want to take our money outside the UK. The big vulnerability of our banks is the way they became massively dependent on money markets and wholesale funding. Only 7 years ago, lending by our banks was financed by the money that came in from regular customer deposits. The net funding gap was nil. But by the end of last year, they were lending far more and needed to raise £625 billion from money markets, a colossal funding gap. So, after the money markets dried up last August, banks have found it really hard to fill that gap and have been forced to borrow more and more from the Bank of England. For the cogs of the economy to turn in a way that generates wealth for all of us, money has to flow through them. But the credit crunch has been a bit like turning off the valve that supplies the money. And the risk is that those wealth-creating cogs will judder to a halt, which is why the Bank of England has been pumping money into our banks, providing an extra £49 billion in just the last week. And over the past 2 years, the authorities have provided £200 billion of extra funds to our banks. It's a kind of nationalisation of our banks by stealth, and it's a response to what one of the world's most powerful central bankers describes as unprecedented turbulence.
We have to cope with, since more than 1 year now, a level of turbulence, a level of volatility on all financial markets, which has never been observed, at least since World War II.
So this weekend's meeting of European government heads is something of a council of war to defeat the chronic lack of confidence that's hobbling the great economic machine. Robert Peston, BBC News.
Robert Peston there with the continued effects of the financial crisis at home in Britain. Well, here in America, the effects are much more painful, and that's the position on the eve of the vote on the rescue package. Our North America editor, Justin Webb, has joined me here. Justin, those who voted no earlier this week, will sufficient numbers of them be persuaded?
What those who are in favour of a yes vote are now saying is that yes, that will happen, and they say they are confident of that. But of course, it's the case as well that they were confident last Monday. What has changed to an extent on their side is that they have managed to pick off some Republicans in particular who are attracted by various aspects of the new bill. The problem they have, though, is that some Democrats do not like the fact that the new bill has spending, tax credits, that is unfunded. And some Democrats see themselves now as the party of fiscal responsibility in Congress. So they are saying, behind the scenes, that they might actually vote no when they voted yes on Monday. So to be perfectly honest, Hugh, if you said you knew how things were going to turn out tomorrow, you'd be crazy.
Well, we will talk to you tomorrow, Justin. Thank you very much. Justin Webb, there, our North America editor. Well, the financial crisis is, of course, dominating the race for the White House, and the campaign over recent weeks has featured little else, really. There are now just 33 days before Americans choose their 44th president on November the 4th. And one of the major polls conducted in the past few days gives Barack Obama up to a 9-point lead over John McCain. And tonight, in just 4 hours' time, there'll be a very big television audience for the only debate of this campaign between the vice presidential candidates, Republican Sarah Palin and Democrat Joe Biden. From Missouri, our special correspondent, Gavin Hewitt, has sent us this report.
The election campaign rolls into St. Louis, Missouri. The focus of attention, Sarah Palin, who for 90 minutes will debate Joe Biden. For her, the stakes couldn't be higher.
It's kind of do or die for her tonight.
Do you think she has to prove herself tonight?
Absolutely. Most definitely.
It was only a few weeks ago that she exploded onto the national scene when John McCain chose her as his running mate. Middle America identified with her, a hockey mom wrestling with family problems. She was immediately different.
Moms, you know, they say the difference between a hockey mom and a pit bull? Lipstick.
Sarah Palin is 44, the first woman governor of Alaska. She has just 2 years' experience in national politics. Initially, she was so popular with the conservative grassroots that John McCain joked he felt like the running mate. But then the doubts grew about her competence. In one interview, she seemed to struggle over the papers she read.
I've read most of them, again, with a great appreciation for the press, for the media.
But like what one specifically? I'm curious that you...
all of them, any of them that have been in front of me over all these years. I have a vast variety of sources where we get...
Her interviews were ruthlessly parodied by the talk shows.
I'm ill about the position that America is in.
And we are ill about this. We're saying, hey, why bail out Fannie and Freddie and not me?
It has got to the point that 6 out of 10 Americans doubt her qualifications to be president. Her Democratic opponent is Joe Biden. He was chosen by Barack Obama precisely because of his long experience in international affairs. Joe Biden is 65. He's a senator from Delaware and a long-time Washington insider. But for all his experience, he often shoots from the hip and can be insensitive. Last year, he said that in Mr. Obama, America had the first mainstream African-American who is articulate and bright and clean and a nice-looking guy. He is a tough debater who likes sharp put-downs. The Republicans run a website detailing his gaffes. When the two vice presidential candidates come here tonight, there are risks for both of them. Certainly everyone will be looking at Sarah Palin and asking, could she actually step up and be president? But there are risks for Joe Biden too, that he might appear sneering or condescending towards his less experienced opponent. That way, he could end up losing the debate. Inevitably, the main spotlight will be on Sarah Palin. Even some conservative commentators are questioning her competence. Tonight, the governor of Alaska will be in the political fight of her life. Gavin Hewitt, BBC News, St. Louis, Missouri.
And there's live coverage of that debate on the BBC News channel. It starts at 2 o'clock in the morning. We'll be back tomorrow for the result of that all-important vote on the bank rescue deal in Congress. But now, George, back to you.
Thank you, Hugh. And coming up on tonight's programme, being cruel to be kind, tracking Kenya's black rhino as they're allowed to roam free again after years in captivity. The number of families falling into fuel poverty has risen dramatically. Latest figures showed that 1 million more households are struggling to pay the bills. And the figures were collected before this year's huge rises in gas and electricity prices. James Westhead reports on the people forced to choose between food and fuel.
The rising cost of fuel is no longer a problem just for the poorest. It's now affecting all of us. It means for millions more this winter, doing this will simply be too expensive. Like pensioner Maureen Hawkins, many who considered themselves well off are now pushed into what's called fuel poverty. That's when 10% or more of your disposable income goes on fuel, making it hard to stay warm.
It's a struggle and it's a worry. You just have to cut back on things what you call luxury, I suppose, to make up for what you're spending on the fuel, on the heating.
Today's government figures show a record 3.5 million living in fuel poverty, but that number will have rocketed further because of very recent price rises. This year alone, gas bills soared 49%, while electricity is up by 29%. The average household fuel bill now tops £1,300 a year, leaving many more struggling.
This is a real crisis. Elderly people, people on low incomes, are having to make seriously difficult choices between eating, heating, and keeping themselves generally alive and together.
Maureen is now getting a new boiler system fitted for free, part of a government strategy to bring down energy bills in the long term.
It's a combination of help to people who are in particular need, but also taking decisions to invest in energy efficiency and insulation that will get our bills down not just this year, but in all of the years to come.
But next week, the government faces an extraordinary challenge in the courts, accused of breaking its own law guaranteeing to cut fuel poverty. Campaigners want to force action over price rises, which have left that promise in tatters, and many more of us facing difficult choices this winter. James Westhead, BBC News.
Police investigating the murder of a city banker killed after confronting a gang in Norwich have charged 2 men. Frank McGarrahan died in hospital on Monday. He was Chief Operating Officer for Barclays Wealth. Tom and Ben Cowles, both in their early 20s and from Cossey in Norfolk, will appear in court tomorrow. A woman with multiple sclerosis is challenging the law on assisted suicide in England and Wales. 45-year-old Debbie Purdy wants to know whether her husband will be prosecuted for travelling abroad with her to Switzerland if she decides to end her life there. Rescuers in the United States have found a small plane which has been identified as the aircraft piloted by the missing adventurer Steve Fossett. The plane was discovered after a walker in California found identity cards and clothing belonging to Mr. Fossett nearby. Steve Fossett has been missing for more than a year. For decades, the black rhino has been a symbol of the world's endangered species. Their numbers had fallen as low as 500. The Kenyan Wildlife Service has been working with our own Zoological Society to revive rhino numbers. Now, for the first time in 25 years, some have been released into the wild. Karen Allen watched as the first batch were returned to their natural habitat.
Tsavo National Park, a dramatic hunt is about to get underway. And this is the target, the rare black rhino. The aim not to kill, but to conserve.
We hit it?
But first, it's got to be immobilised. On the ground, the rhino capture squad is scrambled. Guided in by teams in the air, this a mission to move the first black rhino out into the wild after a quarter of a century protected by a fence.
Down!
The rhino is down. Speed is what's needed now. Eventually we find the vast slumbering beast anaesthetised. A team of vets and rangers are at work, performing medical checks and fitting a transmitter into the animal's horn, so once it's released, it can be traced. Revived from the brink of extinction, black rhinos now need new habitats to feed and breed.
We lost over 19,000 rhinos, 19,500 rhinos. From that sort of stage, we've gradually built up the population. Now it's around 570. We're running out of space in small enclosed areas.
This really is a race against time. The team here want to keep the animal knocked out for as short a time as possible, but she weighs more than a ton, so it really is the safest way to move her. They're just giving an antidote to reverse the anaesthetic. In the next few minutes, the animal will take its first faltering steps in its journey to freedom. It took 17 men to pull, 10 to push. A confused and angry rhino. This is dangerous work. Leaving the safety of the sanctuary, a short drive to a new location. The Kenya Wildlife Service prepares for the release. Free at last, the first rhino is out. The hope is that 2,000 more will follow in the decades ahead. Karen Allen, BBC News, Savo, Kenya.
Well, there's more national and international news on the BBC News channel, but now we can join our news teams where you are. Good night.
Good evening, I'm Sarah Falkland. Teachers from a school in Stoke-on-Trent who were due to fly to Spain this morning for 4 days training have cancelled their trip. The 80 staff spent the day at their school instead, following outrage from parents who said the trip was a waste of money. Kevin Reid has the story.
Sun, sea, sand and sangria are the order of the day at the Andalusia Plaza Hotel in Spain's exclusive resort Marbella. And these are some of the 80 teachers from Ensor Technology College in Stoke-on-Trent about to set off there this morning. The aim was to spend 4 days training at the hotel's 4-star facilities, but it was a trip too far for some parents.
We were sent a letter about it, but you never mentioned anything about Spain, which I still don't understand now what they can learn in Spain that they can't learn here.
They're not too pleased at all about it, all that money.
And as the storm gathered momentum, the head teacher, Richard Mercer, made a last-minute decision to cancel.
I made the decision because I felt it would be counter to the good nature of the staff who wanted to go and produce these materials. That wasn't something that was going to happen with the press being available and around all the time, including presumably at the airport and Marbella. That wasn't something I wanted to put the staff through. That wouldn't produce materials which would be beneficial to the youngsters.
And there are others who believe the trip could never have worked.
It was always going to be perceived as a jolly, but there are many British hotelier, I'm sure, and conference centre manager that would love to quote for this type of event. I think it's right that teachers sometimes do go out of the school environment, but I'm sure it could have been done for the same price in Britain.
And he may well be right. It's estimated that the excursion would have cost around £18,000. But we called a number of hotels in Staffordshire who said they could provide daytime conference facilities for around £5,000 to £7,000. Tonight, though, the big question is, will the school get any money back, having cancelled at such short notice?
An SAS soldier from Hereford may have been killed by one of his own troops, an inquest heard today. Sergeant Jonathan Hollingsworth died in November of 2006 during a raid on a flat in Basra. The Hereford coroner, David Halpern, today said it was impossible to say if the 35-year-old was shot accidentally or by an insurgent. The low-fare airline Ryanair has cancelled 25 flights from Birmingham to largely European destinations later this month. The firm blames a strike at Boeing, which has delayed the delivery of new aircraft. Passengers will get a full refund. Councils are said to be under growing pressure to approve planning applications for controversial wind farms. By the year 2010, the government wants 10% of our electricity to come from renewable energy, such as wind power. But protests from people living near proposed sites have been holding up planning approvals. Here's Kath Mackey.
Five times higher than the trees. Yes. Crikey.
What's worrying them at Upper Strensham in Worcestershire is what's proposed for this site. And here it is. A plan for 3 wind turbines, each 126 metres high to the blade tip, generating electricity for about 3,000 homes.
Very concerned, both from the side of the visual aspect. We will be just over 600 metres from the nearest turbine, and also from the noise intrusion as well.
We've got about 350 people now have signed the petition. It's growing by the day.
A lot more of these could be appearing on our landscape in coming years, as the government's promoting renewable energy where feasible. More than 400 turbines are waiting to be built or going through planning, with claims councils are under pressure to approve them.
Yes, there is growing pressure from central government to, in effect, just stamp these through.
But the company behind the Strensham plan say the benefits will outweigh any potential negative impact.
This site is an appropriate location, being adjacent to 2 motorways and with good grid, electricity grid connections. And not being subject to significant environmental and landscape constraints.
The protest here in Upper Strensham isn't just a small local row. It's part of what seems to be a wider pattern. In North Shropshire and on Cannock Chase, locals have rallied against plans for similar wind farms, and these localised protests could have widespread implications.
Well, it will certainly reduce the proportion of electricity that's generated from renewable energy. There's no doubt about that.
The planning application for the wind farm here is due to be lodged later this year. Kath Mackey, BBC Midlands Today, Worcestershire.
Now, the Black Country dialect is often ridiculed, but in cyberspace it's an entirely different matter, thanks to a growing campaign. Ben Godfrey has the story.
In the corner of his office, Stuart Marsh is indulging in a guilty pleasure, and it's Boston, mate. Stuart's one of 2,000 people who've posted on Facebook. Notice the extra Y? Well, it's a site within a networking site where Black Country folk can chat in their own unique way.
People derided the Black Country accent, whereas now I think people are getting a lot more proud of it, and it's becoming a lot more sort of cool, in a way, to have that kind of accent.
I hate being called a brummie, do you?
Stuart insists all Brummies are welcome to chat with them, including his wife, Marie.
Marie saw my T-shirt, this Boston T-shirt, a year ago, came over to me and said, "Love your Boston T-shirt," and a year later we were married.
The campaign's growing. At Dudley Market today, many thought the concept was a cracker.
I think it'd be a brilliant idea, to be fair. I mean, there's not enough people that take notice of Black Country descent and heritage and things like that.
You're not getting me on TV speaking Black Country. How are you doing? It's all right, mate.
And you're getting on our kid.
Just fine, thanks, mate. And there's another fan, legendary Black Country comedian Tommy Munden. He told me he has to scale back his broad Black Country when he performs outside the region.
My catchphrase, when I started first, would be, "I hate a game." He would say, "Well, I want to carry on, well, I hate a game." And I usually, I could squeal. If you don't put no sugar in my tea, I'll squeal the place down.
Black Country Speak has even spawned new website phrases. My profile is known as...
It's me, ain't.
Your inbox is...
The summit in the post.
A discussion group is...
What you're gabbing on about?
So how do I actually log out? What shall I say? Ta-ra, a bit. Ben Godfrey, BBC Midlands Today, proud to be born in Wolverhampton.
He's got the hang of it all right now. On to football, and in the UEFA Cup first round second leg, Aston Villa drew 1-1 with Lajtek Lovic. Villa win 4-2 then on aggregate. On to rugby, and a disappointing night for Worcester, I'm afraid. In their Guinness Premiership game against Harlequins at Six Ways, Worcester Warriors lost 23 points to 30. That's it from us. Newsnight starting over on BBC Two now, but from all of us here on the Late Team on Midlands Today, have a very good evening.
Hello. I think we can agree that today's been characterised by wind, rain and cold. Well, we can lose one of those, I suspect, in the next 24 hours. We'll just go for windy and cold, but we'll put sunny in instead of rain. That'll be the experience for most of us. Now, the reason it's cold, of course, is because the wind is a northerly. All these arcs of cloud are coming down from the north, never a warm direction. This time of the year, particularly not so. The cloud obviously is with the rain. The strongest winds and the rain at the moment are down the western side of England, also catching Wales, Cornwall. By the early hours, the strongest winds will be down the North Sea coast. Lincolnshire and East Anglia are in line here, and it's a cold night, 4s and 5s in major cities, which of course means outside in rural areas you get the sheen of blue on the ground, a frost to start the day. Now, it doesn't look that good in Scotland to start tomorrow, but actually compared with this morning it's much better. It's not quite as windy, not quite as wet. There's even sunshine for Glasgow and Edinburgh and beyond. That's the story throughout northern England until you get the remains of what's going through now. Miserable start today in Lincolnshire, the East Midlands and East Anglia, and probably Buckinghamshire too, with wind and rain and cold, which will last much of the morning. Wiltshire westwards, though you have the wind, the sunshine is more in the sky. The wind is bringing showers onto the coast of Cornwall, Devon and still Wales, but the wind is not as strong, though it looks it, tomorrow, as is the case even right now. Still windy through the North Channel, showers catching the North and Northern Ireland too, but sun, you have to agree, is predominant. Now, as the day ticks on, this rain does go, but I have to say it's slow in leaving. Disappointing day for you in Suffolk and Essex and Kent, I suspect. Right until the end of the afternoon it's going to be overcast, windy and wet, but it's not everyone's experience. 11 or 12 degrees outside the breeze feels pleasant enough. Now, the coming night, at 24 hours time, will again be a particularly cold one, but probably only briefly, because quickly coming in from the Atlantic this time is Saturday's weather. Now, Saturday is a complete change of weather type. It's clouded and rain, but it's much milder because it's a southwesterly wind. Between Saturday and Sunday, we say goodbye to band one. That was it. That's Saturday's weather. Sunday's is coming in here, so there's barely any time between them. It's a forecast. It may vary, but at the moment it looks like Wales, central and southern England on Sunday will be wet and quite warm. Scotland, northern England, Northern Ireland sunny and not so warm. Which would you prefer?